Hey, this is Tyler Ramsey, and this is Painful Lessons Podcast. And do you know what we love? Stories of hard-earned wisdom. And I'm an artist. I love art. And I'll tell you what we dig here is the art of growth. There's no better way to grow and learn than a little bit of pain. And I think the great thing about anyone that has developed a perspective after going through a painful lesson and then appreciating what they learned from it is that they also develop a bit of humor about it. And honestly, that's the funniest stuff to me. So I have a hero. And his name, and he's with us today, his name is Matthew Barnett. And he founded a place in Los Angeles, and it's called the LA Dream Center. And what it is this giant miracle of a spot in the center of LA, downtown. And I love it so much, among other reasons, because I got sober there. After going to all of these terrific rehabs, these fun, terrific rehabs, one place was considered to be one of the best you can find. And we would go jet skiing all the time, and it was amazing. That didn't work. And then another was amazing. It's called Betty Ford. It's in the desert and it's beautiful and it's fantastic, but it didn't work. And I finally went to a place called the Los Angeles Dream Center, and it is known for they will take anybody that needs help, anyone that needs help, and it's free. And they will take people for a year, and they'll house them and they'll feed them and they'll take care of them. And they don't just take people that have addictions. They take homeless people. They take families that have just lost their home. I'm going to get into the details of, let's say, the stats, but think of 3 giant hospitals filled with people who are being helped and served by this place. And this place, the Dream Center, is connected to and embraced by a church in LA called the Los Angeles Temple. And it is a church that has been famous in LA forever. It was started by this incredible personality named Amy Semple McPherson. And I could go on and on about the intro, but I should soon and now go to my terrific and hero, friend, mentor, Matthew Barnett.
Oh, it's good to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you.
Oh, I'm so pumped.
I brought you in for a couple of reasons. One is just to tell you that I have been sober for almost 4 years now. And so many things in my life didn't work. And what did work was going through a program that the Dream Center has, and it did work, and it's changed my life. And the last 4 years have been the greatest time of my whole life. So I want to first thank you for that. But we have also known each other for a long, long time, and I have been going to your church that you are a pastor of. And so I've always been excited about everything you've been doing. I feel like I don't want to get any of the, let's say, stats wrong. Can you tell me a little bit about what the Dream Center accomplishes in terms of outreach?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. You know, if you think about a big old hospital that's open 24 hours a day, that never closes, and 600 people living there on a day-by-day basis.
Whoa.
It's pretty incredible what goes on. And I think the amazing thing about it is...
Hey, by the way, I just felt you cough. I got a drink for you. Okay. It's the Cadillac of Waters.
I'm all choked up talking to you.
By the way, it's the Cadillac of Waters. You know how they don't really use that phrase anymore.
No,
it's a coconut water. It's the Cadillac of Waters. So enjoy.
Yeah, so the Dream Center has like about 600 residents that live in the building. You know, this big old hospital open 24/7 to anybody that's in need. And the crazy thing is, in 30 years I've been in LA, it's everything I never thought I'd be doing. Everything I never thought I was equipped to do. I didn't come to LA for that. You know, I came to LA because my dad was looking to try to save a building from going to the banks. Our first building was a little old church building, surrounded by one of the biggest gang-ravaged communities in America. And someone said, Pastor Tommy, we'll give this to you. Can you save it? And so he couldn't find anybody, so he asked me to come for 3 months until he could find someone who could do the job. So now it's 30 years. We're still looking for the real person, you know? And so I came there, you know, and I came from a real big mega church, and I was 20 years of age, scared of my own shadow.
Wait, your father is Tommy Barnett.
Yes, the legendary first guy to crack 10,000, you know, as a church.
Yeah.
And
Legend. Billy Graham size legend. Yeah.
broke every record. And so he says, son, I can't find anybody to come to this. I don't want to lose this building to the banks, but I can't find anyone. He said, can you help me for 3 months? And so I showed up. I said, sure. I tried to I only preached a couple of messages in my life. So I just kind of showed up and I borrowed his notes, his 10 greatest hits, and, you know, tried to communicate them the best that I could. And then I inherited 18 people, drove it down to 2, and just like failed over and over again. And just like, why am I doing this? How can I do this? And 3 months turned into 6 months, couldn't find anybody. And then one night I walked through the city of LA after 6 months of utter failure, like peeking out the window. I come from a building of 7,000 seat auditorium. I'm peeking out the window, just hoping somebody would show up, and no one did on a Sunday night. And I was so broken because success didn't look like the way I thought it would be.
Yeah.
You know, I had 5-year goals written out and all the things I wanted to happen in 5 and 10-year goals, and just went home and I ripped it up. I said, this is not going to happen. And so I just walked for 7 hours through the city of LA. I walked through Skid Row. I walked in places where families were, you know, piling in apartments trying to survive. And I walked through, and then I went to the park in Echo Park and saw young men up against police cars being arrested. And that was the night that changed my life. I got one revelation. I've been running on one revelation for 30 years. And that was, I really felt in my spirit, die to the dream of being a success and live to the dream of being a blessing.
Oh, that's profound. That's amazing.
And I could do that. I could use whatever was in my hand to do good.
Yeah.
And little did I realize in 30 years we would be in this 400,000 square foot hospital, 600 people a day living in there, thousands of meals of people coming in all day, being served, food trucks going to 42 sites a week and delivering about 20,000 people were feeding a week.
Yeah.
Place for veterans that are homeless and emancipated minors and trafficking victims. None of that was in my 5-year plan. But when I got to the place where I had nothing left but just to celebrate what I have.
Sure.
And what I had was enough money to buy 5 bags of food.
Yeah.
Move my little old desk on the sidewalk, and when mamas came by, I'd give them a bag of food. And I started to celebrate what I have and didn't put down what I didn't have. And that was the moment everything started to break free. And I began to realize that it was just about being available and being a servant. And that's when everything began to change.
Being a servant. You know, it's so funny when we talk about the let's call it the variety of people there. I just remember being, let's call it a pledge class, like a pledge class of 50 people, all living in these bunks, stacked 3 high. And I remember I was in the middle bunk of just a line of bunks, and it was gang members.
Yep.
It was people that had a lot of violence in their background, or maybe some people that had just been dealt a rough hand, or some people that had made some really terrible choices and they had taken a deal, stay in jail or go to this place, the Dream Center. And I was so overwhelmed with how much everyone encouraged each other. Like how it's like, it really felt like, I didn't feel like there was any cynicism. It was just a group of people that had hit rock bottom and were really excited to be building themselves up. And it was just it's one of the most beautiful times of my whole life. And it was also, everything was so, the rules, I can't say enough how strict the rules are and all of that,
Yeah.
But they shut out all technology, shut out all communication. And I think I was able to read a Bible, and I was able to read, there were only a few books available. I remember sometimes I would just read the dictionary because there was, there were no movies. It was one of the most beautiful times I've ever had. And it was spectacular. It's just such a special place that you created, even though to say it's an army of people that you've also motivated. I mean, how many people work for you? How many people work there?
95 paid employees, and the rest are all volunteers.
Okay. Probably double that in volunteers?
Oh, easily. Triple
Easily.
that. Yeah.
Hey, Trek, will you kick that door? I think I hear an echo. Thanks, homeboy. Okay, so you have all these people coming and going, and so people are, first of all, families are going through their own drama and their own wins and victories and different things, losses and victories. And I just know more about the people in the recovery. But one story that I am very entertained by that I think says a lot about you and the organization is that you used to have this dude that would drive you around, right? Mm-hmm. Is this really charismatic, kind of looks like a football player. Leslie, I think is his name. It's just like really amazing. It looks like he would have been on the old Chicago Bears team doing the Super Bowl shuffle or something like that.
Totally.
Yeah, right?
Perfect illustration.
Yeah. So, and just with that much swagger, and he was driving you around forever. And then one day he dropped you off at the airport. And then as soon as he dropped you off, got another idea in his head and drove across the country looking for some drugs and women and disappeared for a while. And I remember thinking, so I imagine you shut that guy out forever and you're like, no, we immediately welcomed him back.
Yeah, that was a crazy story. It was one of those guys that came through our rehab program. He was involved in gangs and all kinds of violence, and he flourished for a long period of time. Actually graduated the program, went through a second year program. And one of the things about the Dream Center, we're just always taking a risk on risky people.
Oh, yeah.
Not afraid to take a risk on people and give them a shot, of more responsibility of what their life could be. And so he was working with us. He was doing very, very well. Dropped me off at the airport. My car ended up on Skid Row with every type of paraphernalia you could find. Everything wrong that could ever take place in one day took place in that car. It was like, we got a police report. The car was back, and my car was absolutely trashed. And the funny thing about it is, outside the fact that I was astounded that a person can hit rock bottom that fast and that hard, and the things that were in it, and the things that shouldn't be in it, he came up to me and he said, "Well, I guess it's over." And I said, "No, it's just begun." I said, I care less about a car. I care less about any of that stuff. I go, I'm just glad that you're back, and we're going to get you back again, and you're going to do well, and you're going to flourish, and I love you. I just don't love you when you do well. I love you when you hit rock bottom like this, and this is a chance for you to come back better and stronger. And he did. He went a year and 2 years down the road, and then eventually I gave him my car again, which on the surface sounds dumb, but I wanted to see what he could do. And you know what? He'd begin to do the right things. And now he is like one of the top guys at the Joyce Meyer Global Ministries.
Oh, wow.
Like worldwide. And every time I see him, I joke around about, the car incident and when are you going to buy me a new car? And he just laughs. And I said, nah, you don't have to buy me a new car. You gave me a whole new life by you changing and going in the right direction. So it's really cool to see those stories, but you got to be with people in the good times, but you got to be with them in the bad times too, in the tough times. I think that's really when they know how much you love them the most, is when they have nothing to give you but ashes and broken pieces and nothing left. And will you be there for them at that time and be proud of them? And so I said, I'm not proud of you for this day, but I am proud of you for all the days you put into this.
Sure.
And I just feel like sometimes when people are really down, the first thing they need is a spotlight of hope, like a big blinding spotlight of hope when they're down, because there's a scripture in the Bible that says where there is no revelation, people cast off restraint, which means there's no reason to have self-control if there's nothing more to live for. So we like to give people something great to live for in the beginning and then walk them through the steps to get there, because if people have no hope, there's no reason to even try. And the incredible thing is about when you came into the Dream Center program, I couldn't believe it. My assistant told me, Tyler Ramsey wants to come into your program. And I'm like, oh no, like I don't know, man. I don't know if that's the right thing for him. And and I thought, oh, this is going to be crazy. And man, you came in, my friend, like a servant. You came in there and you love those guys. Like they're the most important people in the world. You didn't just acclimate to the program. You threw yourself into the foundational pieces of everything. And man, I saw those days where you would just line up in a line to go to the kitchen, military style. And you did it with great humility, and it shocked me because I didn't know if somebody, who's gone to the level you've gone in success could humble themselves that far. But I realized that greatness is humbling yourself into greatness. You descend into greatness. And I look at your unbelievable studio and all that you do. And I've always known how great you are as a person worldwide. But on that day, I got the chance to see the man who understands what it's like to love people and treat everyone as if they're the most important person in the world. I've seen you do that at galas. I've seen you do that in events. But boy, I saw you do it to the guy that was tweaking coming in from Skid Row. And that brought me so much joy.
Oh, I appreciate it. And because I truly embraced all of those guys like brothers.
Oh, no doubt about it.
Yeah. And they, what makes me sad is that a few of them, I can think of several.
Yeah.
I can think of two. There's, we had homework every week. There was an assignment, it'd be kind of a long, we had to memorize some stuff and about recovery and about the different Bible verses. And we had to, they were all, you had to clean all this stuff. And I would spend every day doing dishes for like 10 hours in this dish pit. And where I think that was during COVID. So you would feed how many people a day? Were you feeding during COVID?
We got up to about 8,000 meals a day, 5 million total during COVID.
Okay. So part of a team cooking that many meals and then cleaning the friggin' dishes. And there was a kind of a road dog buddy that I had, and his name was Caesar. And we would compete to be, the sport. We couldn't watch sports, so it was we would compete to see who could finish our activities first and everything. And he was such an inspiration to me. And I left, and then he stayed a little longer. And he, I think, reached out to some girl that he would talk about occasionally. And every time we would talk about her, I would go, that chick sounds like bad news, dude. What are you talking about? So eventually he got a gig as a night security guard. He invited her in, and then he got caught. And so then they left together, and she gave him something that was laced in fentanyl, and he died. So I can think of, just in my experience, I can think of 10 very close friends that have died. How do you accumulate a quantity of losses that are associated when you take a risk on risky people so often without getting discouraged?
Yeah, it is tough. It hits you every time, someone goes back or, they overdose or go through that situation. But I have to focus on the ones who make it. I have to focus on the wins, the ones who graduate, the ones who flourish, the ones who take the painful lessons of their life and they turn them into like gold like you have. That's what keeps me going, because there's so much pain that would just stop you. It's you just got to reach as many people as you can and focus on the ones who make it. And that's been the secret, is just learning to celebrate that, mourn the loss, but don't be controlled by the feelings of we're inadequate, we haven't done good enough and all that. And you just have to build on what you have. And so when I go across the road and see families together and people who've been restored, who came through our program, who are now doing great things. And I just got to keep my eyes focused on that.
Got it.
But I still grieve, but I just got to focus on the wins, because those are the ones that are going to keep me going and help more people in the future. And that's always the goal, is to see that happen. But the ones that don't make it and they fall on the wayside, it grips my heart greatly.
Right.
But it can't control the work that is being done going forward, because it's so much bigger and there's so many more to save in the process.
Do you I'm sure you can think of plenty of times where you go, today's the day I quit.
Oh yeah. There's many times, the first 25 years, there was those times you want to turn back, and the last 5 years, especially, oh my goodness, they've been so tough, with COVID that took place and losing $2 million of income just like that, because of all the things that were shut down that would be revenue generators for us. And I actually did quit. Matter of fact, I literally told God, after 30 years, I said, God, it's over. It's funny. Sometimes we talk to God and say, it's been a good run, right, God?
Yeah.
It's been a good run. And I actually, in my mind, quit. I was going to resign 3 weeks into COVID because I just couldn't do it anymore. And then I felt in my heart, I said, well, if I'm going to resign, I'm going to go out at least fighting and serving and helping people.
Sure.
It started with my desk on the sidewalk, and it's going to end with my desk on the sidewalk. And so I just sent out a little Twitter message. Hey, if anyone needs food, drive your car by during COVID, pop your trunk open and we'll put stuff in the back. And that was really done, not necessarily as a great outreach plan. It was just done as a kind of a farewell. I'm going to go out serving.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then in the process, what happened was cars started to show up, and then they started to show up. And I basically prayed to God. I said, God, it's over, right? Remember I said it's over. And here, one thing I
I should say, you operated what was essentially a drive-through with free food. And you would serve 8,000 meals to people who needed. Yeah, that's
and it started off with like a dozen, and then turned into 100. And in my mind, I already quit. I said it's over. But before it's over, I got to feed people the next day, and the next day, and the next day. So we went 380 days in a row in feeding people. 380 that I personally was there feeding people every single day for hours on the food line, and for 380 days, I already quit in my mind. Which the truth is
so
this:
wild.
It's amazing what you can do when you've already told yourself you've already given up. Because I'd given up, but here's what the great thing about faith is. I think sometimes we see faith as like, oh, I feel so confident, and everything's good, and many times faith is like having all the doubt in the world, but you still find yourself shuffling your feet forward towards something, which means that your faith is ultimately greater than your fears because you're still moving in the direction of what you need to do. And
you're the opposite of a quitter. I think one of your, most impressive and exciting accomplishments is that to raise money, you ran 7 marathons on 7 different continents in only 7 days.
Yep.
And that's untouchable. Like in terms of, I haven't heard anything like that. So that's just to establish that you're not a quitter.
The insanity, yes. Establish the insanity.
But you got to a point, and then that, emotionally, maybe you kind of felt a bottom. I got to quit here. But then sticking around for a little longer was enough to boost you up.
A little bit longer. I felt like there's been so many times where all I had left was enough energy for 24 more hours.
Yeah.
But, when I got through that 24 hours, I found new mercy on the next day, and I found a new strength on the next day. And then you get kind of the wind back. And I think many people quit right before the greatest breakthrough, right before the biggest thing has ever happened. And so everybody in California was in lockdown. They were at home and they were following us, feeding meals and, trying to do the best we could in the circumstance, but popping meals in the trunk as people are coming by, and it captured the nation. And little did I realize that an idea that I had of quitting and just going out on principle by serving and giving out meals would stir the nation, and people were showing up, and it became an absolute chaos of a level I've never seen before in my entire life. And it kept me in, and I kept going and kept going. Then I got my second wind back, and I felt inspired again. And that's why you always can't trust your feelings. They're very deceptive at times, and go forward even when you don't feel something, because you can't always trust what you feel, because there's always that second and third wind around the corner.
And then you had 2 strokes.
Yeah, I had 2 strokes, and one time I was at a mall getting one of those chair massages.
Yeah,
and the guy was driving his elbow in my neck, and then all of a sudden I couldn't talk. Like, what's going on here? And found out I have a factor 5 blood clotting issue in my body, and so I clot more than others. And so I drove it right to my brain. Had 3 clots in my mind and up here, and then they took me to the hospital 2 years ago, and they gave me this, shot, clot busting shot. And
wait, what was the shot? They said if you were 20 minutes later.
Yes, it was one of those you had to get in the first hour. Yep.
Your face would fall down and everything.
Yep, I was already starting to get a little bit of paralyzation right here, but it all came back. And we were 8 days away from missing payroll. And so I'm calling the team and staff and telling them, hey, max out my credit card. And then the roof of our building had a collapse where we had the old 100-year dome pieces begin to fall. Thank God, not when service was going on.
Sure.
And so that was $1.2 million out of our building. Everything hit at once. And I just sat there and I said, God, if you love the people that are the most broken of humanity, if you love those that have been forgotten and forsaken, if you love them that much, you've got to show up and you've got to do something. And then people started rising up, and one businessman said, I'll take over fundraising for 30 days. You just get better. And And then, but I got up, and all my, work mindset of finding a solution. I tried to speak in New York City for an engagement I was already supposed to speak at.
Wow.
And flew out to New York and had equilibrium issues. And it was the most terrifying. I had to kind of stop in the middle of my message and put it on autopilot message because I could barely even stand up in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And then I realized that, there does come a time of your life where you just have to sit back and just watch and let people love you, let people help you.
Sure.
And not be the solution to everything, and just see what happens next.
How often do you say to yourself, I don't think I can think of any time where I've heard you swear. How often to yourself or privately do you just go, son of a bitch? Or do you find yourself actually going, Jesus Christ?
I usually don't say that one because I was raised in a Pentecostal family, and it's just too scary to even say that for me. You know what I mean? But all the other words, all and above, have definitely been mentioned in my brain for sure. And yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's a number that can describe that.
Do you know what's so great is the place that it's like, I feel the great thing about the Dream Center is that it's very clear. It's not a place for perfect people, but it's a place that I think if anyone embodies, or if anyone would be welcome, it would be David from the Bible. It's like, I think it is so cool and entertaining that our biggest hero, other than Jesus,
right,
our biggest hero is such a massive screw up.
Yes.
And not just accident prone, but the facilitator of some very devious plans.
Right.
And so humble. I also like that he was an artist. He was a great, what instrument did he play? Not the fiddle, but the harp.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, this amazing poet, but I think I don't know why there aren't a million movies, Hollywood movies about David. And I've never really seen one that I thought was just incredible of David and Goliath. But I want to ask you a couple questions about David, and as about like kind of what an amazing leader that he is. And it's so interesting that he's not just our hero, but he's also the hero of all, the entire Jewish faith,
yeah,
the hero of Israel. And it's such a unique thing for someone to kind of be a champion from two different, hey, not just for the Jews, but also for the Christians. I think that's such an interesting thing. Is there anything this is a big question, or I should say this is very broad, but when you think of King David, what are some of the features that excite you the most?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
It's my favorite too. David had this unbelievable moment, the most epic moment of his life where he destroyed Goliath in the field, and confidence returned to the people, and they rushed the field because somebody had done it, and all these great things that he did. And then people don't talk about, like, after that season, he becomes a fugitive. Like, King Saul is chasing him because he's jealous of David's fame. And so he goes from this unbelievable moment, iconic moment beyond any Super Bowl of defeating this giant, and now he finds himself hiding in the cave with a jealous king that was trying to destroy him. And yet he had the power at times in that cave to take Saul's life.
Right.
But he even honored him and said, no, this is God's man. I don't touch this man.
Didn't he?
So he had chances.
Didn't he do something to make it clear to Saul? But I could have.
But I could have. Yes,
Yeah.
he was able to even touch his garment, and but at the same time, I think he understood that power was something that was given by God, and God would exalt him in due season. And he did learn a painful lesson in the cave of Adullam when everyone left him. I mean, you talk about like this culture that will praise you 1 second and put you down the next moment. He's like the champion. The Bible even says that people were singing songs about his great heroic deed. And then because Saul changed the propaganda, he's running, hiding in the cave. And
Explain what that is. Explain what you mean.
King Saul was the leader of the day, and he was able to set the tone about why David was a menace to society after what he did. And so the Bible says that the only people that came to David's rescue when he was hiding out in the dark cave of Adullam were people who owed money, who were distressed, who were the most broken people of humanity. It was said those were the ones who came to David in his distress. So that was the team he had to kind of rebuild his life and keep him going. But yet he operated in principle. So he's a very unbelievable, complex character of somebody who had great faith to do great things. He would he had respect for God and honoring others. He even honored a crippled man, Mephibosheth, who did something nice for him years ago in his life. And he brought him to the king's table, allowed him to sit there. And yet he was scheming to put, the husband of his adulterous relationship on the front line, Bathsheba.
Yeah. And that is one of the most despicable things.
It really is.
He had an affair with Bathsheba.
Yep.
And then he needed to cover it up because she was pregnant. And he thought, well, if it's Jonathan, not Jonathan, what was it, Uriah?
Yes.
Yeah. If I can get Uriah to have sex with Bathsheba, then we'll just act like it's his baby. And so then he gets Uriah drunk so that he'll have sex with Bathsheba.
Yep.
But for some reason, Uriah won't have sex with her.
Yes, because he was too committed to the task that David gave him to do go to war.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to be sidetracked by that.
Yeah. So David was like, oh my God, this guy.
Too perfect.
So, this guy. And then he said, all right, he sent a letter to the generals.
Yes.
Send this guy to the most dangerous place and then back off.
Yes.
And I mean, talk about despicable, because Uriah was his good friend.
Yeah.
What do you think anyone can learn from that lesson of our biggest hero, an example of someone who it's very clear was like God's boy?
Yeah.
What can we learn from that?
I think we can learn too that success and fame and getting to a place where you've started to achieve great things like he did. He didn't go to the front lines of battle like he used to, and he got disconnected from the process of the miracle that was happening and what it took, and he started to remove himself from the front lines, and he felt like he could kind of manage what was clearly built by his unbelievable heart and soul and sacrifice. And he just got disconnected from purpose, from the root, from the assignment, from the touch and the feel of the pulse of what was going on, and got into a place where it was all about strategy but less about heart.
Yeah.
And then he was trying to figure out how to preserve power more than he was of being the leader that gathered people while he was in the cave and took the distress and built a great army. But then he goes back into a situation where he just wants to die. It's unbelievable. He says, God, take my life. He said, my bones are rotting away every day and just kill me now. And then he says, restore to me the joy of my salvation, which means that, I don't even know if I want my power back. Like, the evidence of my comeback is not my kingdom. The evidence of my comeback is not my palaces. The evidence of comeback is just renew a good spirit within me again.
Right.
And so I think he wanted the right things back. He didn't want power back. And a lot of times when people lose everything,
that's amazing.
The problem is they want the wrong things back. The evidence of your comeback is not, I got my wife back because I got sober, or I got my job back because I got sober. David said the evidence of my comeback is I just have a right spirit again. And when you have that, you have everything. And so I always tell people in recovery, I said the evidence of your comeback is not what you get back, is your heart right with God again? Are you back into a right relationship and into a renewed spirit? And so I think many times people only view their return back into life as all the things restored. God gave David those things. He got half the kingdom, then he got all the kingdom.
Yeah.
But I don't think it really mattered that much to him the second time around.
He had some pretty serious repercussions.
Sorry, I just need to pause. I had to pee so bad, I can't wait anymore. Can we just...
Go pee. Yeah.
No, it's good.
Give me 30 seconds to pee.
That's why we have Gatorade
You
bottles
got
in
it.
here.
Cut my pee out.
Yeah, leave the door open for a second. I feel like we're getting close-ish.
No, that's a good, interesting topic.
It's great, man. This is good. Just talk about a ringer. So Trek was before you. I interviewed Trek before you. Trek is another mentor of mine. He is an artist and has maybe lived one of the most incredible, exciting lives. He at one point ran for governor against Arnold. Remember that?
Yeah.
And he for a year he only wore this one shade of blue. It's called it the Blue Party. and he spent another year wearing only a tuxedo, and another year he went into the self-imposed exile in the desert, longer than Jesus. He did it for a year, and is just, and so he's an artist, and he's just done all these amazing things. So I was like telling him today, I said I got 2 ringers today. I'm like, no matter what I ask, there's 2 amazing stories. It's kind of a can't lose set of interviews.
No, you just make it so easy. I mean, it flows so natural. Yeah.
Yeah. How are you feeling about your podcast right now? Because you started one.
Yeah. Well, we're building a whole podcast room. It's
wow.
The whole 15th floor is being a podcast room right now.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's
you'll be able to rent it out.
Oh, I'd love
Also,
to.
yeah.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Such a.
It's gonna be unbelievable. Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah. So, and then now that we have a team in place, Jacob Bender and all, we'll be able to do it set time every week. So.
Okay. Hey, we were on the subject, David. Oh yeah. Will you? When I think of David and the repercussions that he had, he didn't go. He wasn't just given a pass after doing such despicable things. He was forgiven, but there were what were the repercussions? Because it didn't just affect David.
Yeah, no, it affected a lot of people. Like, his son Absalom, he had a revolt against his own bloodline. Absalom tried to, usurp authority and power over him. He had a lot of issues, regarding that and trying to make a comeback. A lot of things that he had gone through. And I think one of the biggest things that he was also dealing with, I think too, was the rebuilding of faith again, the rebuilding of his courage to be a great leader again. And so he began to shape a lot of his life a little bit different in the sense of he would value relationships and people, and he would look for people who have been distressed in the past and bring them to the king's table, or people he had done wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think if you look at David's life, like the first 2/3 of the Psalms he wrote, he used to say, God shall supply all my needs and all these different things. But if you look at the final third of what he wrote, he would say, my God shall supply all my needs. So showing that God became more personal to him after his brokenness and became more real to him, as my God was featured 2 or 3 times more than when he said, God shall supply all my needs. So I think he just went through an understanding of he couldn't do this alone. He couldn't maneuver things big enough. He had family problems with his son who broke away from him and was trying to usurp authority. So he just, I think he operated with so much more compassion regarding things and how he led and how he ruled, but yet still had the same kind of, conquering spirit that he needed to have when he had to have it.
It's interesting that Israel has, like Israel throughout the Bible, is either being humbled, and it's never a light touch. They're being humbled, or they are coming out of a period of being humbled, a period of, let's say, pain. They're coming out of a painful lesson, and whoever has been on top of them during their humbling is about to get smashed. And I think that it's so interesting for me. The story of David teaches one thing, and it's the same as it does in some ways for Israel. And it's for each of us. If we are not searching for humility, actively going after humility,
it's true.
Then humility is about to come and find us, and it's going to be painful.
It's a great point. Yeah, it's funny because at the end of David's life, it said of his life, the one sentence description was, he was a man after my own heart, God said.
Oh, man.
And if you look at that, it's like, man, not in his whole life he was. I mean, there was a lot of times he wasn't after your heart. But, the other day I was watching a boxing match, and it was one of those late night ESPN fights where no one's really good, but they're just fighting. But I just love watching anyways. And I caught at the end of the round, and this guy was getting beat so bad. And so I only caught like a minute and a half of the fight, and then went to the judges' scorecards. And the guy who won was the guy who was most beat up, and like his eye. And how did this guy win? But I only tuned in for 90 seconds. Yeah. But when they went through the scorecard and they looked over the whole course of the whole fight, that man was the winner. And when I see that story, He was a man after my own heart. God doesn't look at a few rounds of our life before he declares what you are. He looks at the whole scorecard. So it's never too late. I always err on the side of God can do anything. My goal is to be so positive. I make Joel Osteen look negative, and but it's just really, I just believe that people can make comebacks. I believe that they can make it. And I'm always erring on the side of giving somebody another chance, because that's exactly how we were created, as people, a second chance.
There's a bare knuckle fighter, a female bare knuckle fighter, and her name is Killer B.
Yep.
Taylor Starling, I think, Killer B. And there's this meme that was really famous, and her face is Meatloaf. I mean, she looks like Meatloaf.
Yes.
And and they interview her and they go, "How was it?" And they're like scared to talk to her. I mean, it looks like every bone in her face is broken. And she goes, "Oh man, it was great. I had a great time. I mean, this happened, but what a great experience." And I'm going to have her on my podcast soon because,
that's great.
I just think, like, what an incredible attitude. I mean, she just lost. She just got pounded, and her face could potentially be permanently deformed.
Right.
But she's like, what a great experience. And I think that is, I mean, that's the attitude of a winner. I think if there is an attitude of a winner. Sometimes I think about the story of David, though, and I think the story of David and Goliath. Let's say we didn't grow up in Israel. Let's say we didn't grow up with Israel. Let's say we were Team Philistine, right? And we see this big dude, and he's always practicing his sword fighting, and he's practicing everything but the ability to duck when a rock comes at his head. So it's like do you ever think about the people in history when we look at the Bible that maybe weren't fighting for God and for the people of Israel? Maybe they were terrific people. Like maybe maybe Goliath did all kinds of charity work. Maybe he had like 7 sons and was the best dad in the world. And maybe he was like a faithful husband in a world where they had 20 wives or something. So it's like maybe Goliath was an amazing, we don't even get to see that. We know they talked some serious shit about Israel.
He sure did.
To the wrong guy.
And he did it morning and evening. He'd come out of his tent and
morning
talk
and
trash and then go where he went to. So I think he's trying to remind people in the morning that I'm the baddest dude ever.
Yeah.
And before I go to bed, I'm going to remind you, and that's a great picture of fear in itself. It reminds you the morning and the evening usually of how big it really is. But yeah.
But this world is, it's like there was a Chinese empire that was incredible at the same time as Jesus was kind of coming up. And so it's like, do you ever think about, I always just think this is all above my pay grade. I don't even know what like in terms of, if you ever do thoughts of fairness, or why is just this group exposed to God for so long, and who is going to heaven and who's not going to heaven? And what about, what if this one group in Rwanda let's say they don't even have the internet. They don't even know they're exposed. Tell me if you have thoughts of fairness and who's going to get theirs. Does any of that stuff go through your head?
Well, I think what really goes through my mind is that, Jesus coming down from heaven and walking amongst men, walking amongst people, suffering like we suffer, knowing what it's like to be hungry, knowing what it's like to, and becoming that suffering savior becomes the game changer for everybody, because everyone can relate to someone who came down universally to die on the cross for everyone.
Yeah.
So I do believe that message is so important, because I think people are always trying to get to God. They're climbing steps to please their God. They're doing works and acts. And the more you just study, the life of Christ, it's just all about, there's nothing you can do to earn yourself into heaven. It's all a free gift of salvation. It's all like something that was already paid for. And I don't think people can kind of comprehend that they always feel like they've got to be good enough, do enough, and perform enough, and all that. So I think what helps me in understanding all of that is the fact that the world is a very, very confusing place, and that's why a suffering Messiah came to this earth and gave his life for mankind. And I do believe that there are people all over this world who are in search of something that's so personal and relatable,
Yeah.
and so freely given. So to me, I just kind of focus on the fact of how beautiful the gift was sent from heaven, and really what it means to humanity and how readily available it is. But I think it's very hard in a works-based, if you do this for me, I'll do that for you type of world, to understand that free of a gift to the world. And I think the opportunity is just to let people know that religion is not something that you attain to. It's something that has already been given to you as a free gift.
How do you answer tough questions like, I have people in my family who've killed themselves that I love, and I hope to think that, but to be honest, I don't remember where I've read this, but it's my impression that suicide, if you commit suicide, you're not going to go to heaven.
I don't believe that.
Okay.
I really don't. I believe that God, if that were the case, it would be like, the last sin you ever committed before you died, was the last thing that God remembers.
Yeah.
I think God looks at a person's life. He looks at the whole picture of what they're going through, and sometimes pain, and taking your life is a mistake, and it's an exit that you have, and it's not the right one because God has a way out for you. But I believe that the sacrifice of Christ is way bigger than even those questions that we have about, and also I just don't believe that there's scripture that really backs up the fact that if we take our life, then we lose our life forever.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I believe that the cross, the power of grace and mercy is so amazing, because some of the best people that I know who love the Bible read it every single day.
Sure.
In a moment of weakness, they were just overwhelmed, and they took their life. There's no way in the world that those people who had a sincere heart and loved God would ever be turned away.
I feel the same way. There are so many personalities in let's say the field of just Christianity and pastors, priests, everything. And I've always felt from you that you love finding what you have in common with those people and appreciating that ideally everyone loves God, and they're trying to find us love in each person. And then there are, like, I'm referencing one thing that I saw a video. There's this guy, Mark Driscoll, and he showed up at someone else's pastor event, all these pastors, and he showed up and he was like, man, this thing seems gay as hell. And I think he's called it like a spirit of Jezebel, and it created a riff.
Yeah.
You are anti-riff, I think. I think that you have always been I've never heard you say anything negative about any other personalities or you felt a negative sense of competition, but it's an interesting world.
Yes.
And
yes.
you travel with you and in some areas, like I think at Dallas, Texas right now,
Mm-hmm.
they've had a couple of scandals happen.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep from getting discouraged or cynical about when you see things happen with church leaders? And
Yeah, no, you do see a lot of things like that, and you see a lot of really big churches that, just kind of use their money to buy more stuff, and have the bigger and better than one down the street, and all those type of things. But what I've tried to understand is that my ultimate assignment is to that guy living on Skid Row. My ultimate assignment is to the person in the community who needs help. And I used to say this all the time growing up. I used to say, well, I'm my own man. I don't need my dad's influence, or I don't need anybody else because I'm my own man. But then one day I caught myself and said, that's kind of like reckless and irresponsible, because if you really want to help people, you will use every tool that you have to do that. And that is relationships with pastors. And so I used to think that, because we're in the urban area, loving and caring so much, I'm the only one who cares, And then I realized that, no, I'm not the only one who cares, And my message began to change from everybody cares rather than a martyr complex. And what happened is it started drawing people who wanted to be a part of that message, and, pastors who wanted to give, and they started sending your youth groups out and teams and to serve. And so I realized that if I wanted to give the people of LA who have been forgotten, who have been broken, a voice, and to be able to uplift them with hope, I've got to understand that I need people along the journey to help us. And talking down to them or, casting divisions and saying things about what I don't like is not going to help. What's going to help is exposing them to things that you want them to change about. Yes, you have a big church, but you can use that big church to help people 7 days a week and not see Sunday morning as the only destination spot. So I just created a message that, you know what, I believe you care. I believe you care. And even if they didn't care, by the time you shook your head long enough and said you cared, they wanted to care. And so I was raised in ministry.
That's awesome.
I've heard people say things about my dad as a pastor's kid that were horrific, like being in the bathroom and overhearing things. And my dad would never let me ever talk negative about someone who says something bad about him.
It's amazing.
I said, why? He goes, well, they had a bad day today, but do you realize what they did for me yesterday? They helped me build this building.
Yeah.
And he lives by this philosophy as it's not what you've done for me lately, it's what you did for me formerly or yesterday. And so he never forgets what people did to bless him.
It's amazing.
At a time where they were maybe in a better spot, but even if they don't feel that way now, it doesn't forfeit what they did for him yesterday.
It's amazing.
So it's very tough, the challenges and the infighting and sometimes, picking fights just to, pick corners of we're this and you're not that. And I think we all have our special gift and we all have our talents, and just to celebrate that and bring it to the fold of what we're doing is just going to help that kid down the street who doesn't have a place to live. I'm
going to close with this story. I'm going to tell a story and then we're done. But to me, this story represents what I think that you kind of bring to the table and what this whole place that you built brings to the table. It's one of my favorite stories. And so you have, within the Dream Center, you have a big human sex trafficking wing. Emergency shelter. And it's such a special place. And to be honest, I've never even gone into the thing because the worry is that they are so traumatized by males that have abused them. So it's, you keep things feeling very safe for a while. Then they get into the program, but I know it's an amazing thing. And the numbers, the stats of how many people you help are incredible. So at one point, this is my favorite story, you got a call and someone said, we have just, we responded to a cry for help. There's a woman and she has been forced to be a prostitute and we just came across her and she said, I want out of this. And we're trying to bring her in, but we are being chased by her prostitute, her pimp. Yes. And there's several cars. We're being chased. And so we're speeding to you now. We'll be there in like 15 minutes and we don't know what to do. Do we go to the police station and you go, come here, we got you. And you were able to assemble a group of the toughest gang members who are going through the recovery. So it was I think I heard it was like maybe 10 different badass full-on gang members that are very used to violence. Yes. And one thing is everyone in this recovery, they all wear these black sweatshirts and black t-shirts and they say the Dream Center.
It's like a Raiders football game. Yes.
It looks like looks like an old school Raiders football game. When it was actually in Oakland. Yes. Is exactly what it looks like. Just a bunch of badass, I can see a Samoan here and a little linebacker there, but yeah, the toughest group, tattooed faces, and they stood out in a line, or I should say a gate, created a human gate, and they opened for the car to bring the woman in, and then they closed, and there was a standoff for a minute of the pimp and these, let's say 10 men, and it didn't go to gunshots. It didn't turn into an altercation, but the guy never came back.
Yeah. They just stood there like this and shook their head.
So you were able to take these broken, these very real, sinful types that were so excited to have found a spirit in themselves and a spirit up there that they could do better, and you were able to use them to save another person deeply wounded And I think that's such a beautiful, it's my favorite story. It's my favorite story.
Yeah, I mean, these guys were saved, but just barely saved. I didn't
Barely
need
saved.
saved people. I needed barely saved people for that mission. You know what I mean? And people that will hold a Bible in their hand, but
Yeah.
would cut you with the other hand, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, and it was just really how amazing it is that people are just willing to rise up. They just want to be used. You know, they've been broken. And, you know, if you give them an opportunity to just be a part of something, it's incredible because, you know, people lose their mission all the time, but you give them a brand new mission.
Yeah.
And it just resparks everything and it makes it a very special place.
I love it. We're done. Peace. Peace. Amazing. Jerry,
Best,
cut.
bro.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.